Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network. And I want to thank everyone that follows Charlton and Big C Sports worldwide. So bienvenidos to all of our good listeners in Latin America. Also, you good old boys out in Germany, as well as the good old guys up from Canada. And I like to say, oh, Canada, as well as our good old boys in Australia. And I've even had some good old boys tweeting out from Dubai. But Big C, I know down south, do you guys know what tweeting means and listening on iHeartRadio is, Big C? Or are you guys still listening just to football, Big C? Your thoughts on that?
well, Charlton, when we hear the tweeting going on, we know we got an opportunity to sneak up on a bird, and he has an opportunity to eat lunch and dinner. It all depends on the time of the day. So we like to hear that tweet when we walk through the trees and everything.
I understand that, Big C. I know out here in California there's so much talk about the great sport of college football kicking off in about 8 days, Big C. We're looking forward to that. And there's some great games on tap in the first couple of weeks. You have USC, of course, playing Alabama down in Texas in Jerry Jones Stadium. UCLA, they're traveling from the West Coast to Texas also, and they're playing Texas A&M at College Station. You also have Notre Dame, the great Notre Dame with Touchdown Jesus. They're playing the good old boys from Texas. So if you look at the great state of Texas, they're hosting arguably the best couple of college football games. It's almost like a college football playoff already, Big C. Your thoughts on Texas bringing in some of the top teams, Big C?
Well, things are bigger in Texas, Charlton, than where they are everywhere else. You know, they think big. And when you look at the first week of the season and what they have with Alabama, USC, and the kickoff classic, they're in Texas Stadium. Well, not Texas Stadium, Dallas Cowboys Stadium.
Yeah, AT&T.
You got UCLA going out to play Texas A&M in front of 120,000 people, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's an amazing thing. You think about the University of Notre Dame, one of the top. Notre Dame and Texas are the top two win teams of all time in college football.
Yeah.
Playing each other the opening week of the season. People know that Texas struggled somewhat last year with their new coach Charlie Strong.
And
Notre Dame is coming into this game, Charlton, with a lot of trouble. They got 6 players that they just suspended or dismissed from the university. So there could be some turmoil, and these are all defensive players, Charlton. So you know, Kelly is going to have to make some adjustments for the first week of the season.
Well, you know, when you think about the great Charlie Strong down at Texas, he actually did a great job with Louisville, actually coached Teddy Bridgewater, a draft pick by the Minnesota Vikings. And would you believe after Mack Brown left and he took Texas and won a national championship game when they beat USC down in the Rose Bowl in 2005, and would you believe that Mack Brown lasted several seasons down there, and of course he did win a national championship kind of in the latter part of his coaching days, Big C. But Charlie Strong, he was under fire the first year, Big C, with Mack Brown's players. I mean, it's not even about color when it comes to that. I think Texas is just a tough place to win, and I think they've also expanded their stadium down in the great state of Texas. But when you look at Charlie Strong, and we'll bring it up because he's an African-American quarterback, African-American coach, when you think of him, will he even be given the same type of leeway that Mack Brown got with the good old boys down in the great state of Texas, Big C?
Well, you know, when you think about the last 5 years of Mack Brown's career, Charlton, they weren't great. You win a national championship, they allow you to just stay around and live on your laurels for a while. But Mack Brown had lost his recruiting edge. And when you think about his competition for recruiting, Charlton, in the great state of Texas, you got Texas A&M, you got Texas Tech, the University of Texas, and everybody else. TCU is right there, Charlton. So just in those schools alone, you got top 20 colleges. And then on the fringes, you got the University of Oklahoma, who comes in and pulls out a wealth of players. Oklahoma State, Charlton. So the state of Texas did not no longer belong to the University of Texas.
Yeah.
It belonged to this wealth of college. Also, look at the rise of the University of Houston, Charlton.
Yeah.
Who is opening up the season in a top-ranked game against Oklahoma.
I think they're going to beat Oklahoma, too.
Well, when you think about the top 2 quarterbacks in college football, you got to look down at Clemson, you got to look down at the University of Houston. These 2 universities have some young men that can spin the football. And if it wasn't for their color, everybody would be talking about they're the first two quarterbacks going to be drafted this year in the NFL draft.
Yeah, well, Texas is a hotbed of talent. And nationwide, when you follow college football, we've talked about it before, Big C, on iHeartRadio, where if you have on the West Coast, if USC is good, if UCLA is good, and they are, then you have Stanford, you have Oregon, even the University of Washington and Arizona State. When those teams are good, the Pac-12 is strong. And also, of course, down south, you good old boys have your Alabamas, your LSUs, your Georgias, your Floridas. And I think Ole Miss is a lot better than people give them credit for. They've beaten Alabama the last 2 seasons, Big C, and I think Lynn Swann got a hold of that tape, Big C, so he's really looking forward. He's looking forward to the Alabama game. And then up in the Northwest, if you look at some great programs, whether it's Virginia or Syracuse, and of course, you go over to the Midwest, you have Ohio State, you have Michigan State. College football is great, and I love the fact that unlike some of the schools in the SEC, and I know you don't like to hear this, Big C, but even SEC teams are scheduling strong out of the gate, Big C. That's kind of new for the good old boys in the SEC, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, when we look at the SEC, we have to look at the number of coaches that has hoisted that national championship trophy.
Yeah.
It's unparalleled. Think about the times that Nick Saban, I believe he has 5 since he's been in the SEC.
Yeah.
As a head coach, you got Les Miles, who has won that. Urban Meyer won it twice in the SEC, Charlton. You got Will Muschamp that had won at Auburn. So, we got a lot of coaches. Steve Spurrier won it a couple times at Florida also. So when you think about it overall, there's been 8 national championships that have come out of the SEC since the inception of the Bowl Championship Series by the NCAA.
Yeah.
So when you look at the wealth of talent that has come out of the SEC, not just players, but the coaches, when you look around, there's been some great quarterbacks, but there's been even greater role players, offensive linemen, running back, receivers. You've had some quarterbacks while they were in college get accolades, but their supporting cast has been playing in the NFL for a very long time, Charles.
Well, Big C, that's very true. And speaking of playing a long time, this segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go down there and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. And also, Big C, every time I'm driving on the highway here in California, one of the great interstates is called Interstate 5. It kind of links Canada all the way to Mexico, Big C. And I see a lot of Cadillacs out here. There's no mud on them. They're all nice and shiny. But when I was back south, you good old boys, most Cadillacs that I saw, they were like mud. They was like Lightning McQueen was driving them, Big C. A lot of mud on those cars. So I want you to
think about it. What's the one thing you don't get in California?
Oh, man, we don't get a lot of rain right now, Big C.
Okay, all right, that's the key.
Okay.
You have no moisture, so you can't make mud. There's a lot of dust on the cars in California. But back here, we got so much rain that we have no choice but to have mud. Whether you're in the driveway or up and down the freeway.
Well, I'm sure the Cadillac dealers and down in the South, they understand that too, Big C. But also, when you think about some of the things that make me extremely happy is we just got through the Olympics. We know that was great. And I still want to comment about Kobe Bryant and what he's done, opening up that hedge fund, I believe it was, or an investment fund with $100 million. So that's teaching people how to put money into the system. But before we get into some of that, Big C, I still want to ask you about college football, because out here on the West Coast, the argument is that most games that are seen by the majority of media, the New York media, those games are played at 7 o'clock, even 7:30 late kickoff on the West Coast, Big C. And so it's 10:30 at nighttime when they get to even kick off. So a lot of the pollsters and the writers, the guys that vote for the Heisman Trophy, the guys that do the rankings, a lot of you good old boys are asleep because you had too much moonshine, Big C. Do you guys feel the bias out there where you are too, or do they just think of Californians complaining, Big C?
Well, Charlton, there's definitely a bias. When you look at what McCaffrey did last year at Stanford.
Yeah.
The NCAA all-time single-season all-purpose yardage gainer.
Yeah.
The guy had over 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards in receiving, 1,000 yards kick returns. This was a tremendous athlete in any other era. And I think there was also some racial bias towards him also, Charlton.
Because he's white?
He was not a black athlete. If he had been a black athlete,
wait a minute,
with those type of numbers, he would have won the Heisman hands down.
You just got Donald Trump's eyebrows to rise up a little bit higher. That toupee might be flapping off of his head, Big C. You said there's racial discrimination in the world of college football against white players, Big C. Is that what you just said?
That's what it was, Charlton. When you look at the year that McCaffrey had, I don't care whether he's playing East Coast, West Coast, playing against Pop Warner teams, Charlton, to accumulate that type of yardage in every game during the regular season. But not only that, Charlton, I believe in the Rose Bowl he had over 420 yards in total offense.
Yeah, he set a record.
It set a record in the Rose Bowl. Now, that was viewed by the nation.
Yeah.
And that was just a scene of what he had done all year long consistently. Yes, they gave the Heisman to Derrick Henry out of Alabama. They talked about Leonard Fournette out of LSU being the greatest player in college football.
Yeah.
But McCaffrey at Stanford was the greatest football player last year in college football, and maybe, Charlton, over the past decades. Remember, he broke Reggie Bush's record. Yeah. And everybody talked about the accolades of Reggie Bush. But McCaffrey set the table so high it may never be broken, Charlton, in college football.
Yeah, and in fact, his father played in the NFL. Actually, I think he played for the Denver Broncos, Big C, and his father Ed, and they have an athletic family. But it's interesting you bring that point up because if you think back to pre-integration and you had the Heisman Trophy winners, there were no black Americans even being asked to come to New York City, Big C. I know that Jim Brown's considered the greatest football player ever, but that was almost like a hiccup because it is controlled by media, and sometimes some of the white schools didn't want to play the black athletes until they had integration, Big C. They didn't want to have them come into their schools, and even then, they didn't want to give them a lot of credit when it came to giving players credit. But when you look at McCaffrey and what he's done, he had better numbers than Reggie Bush, who won the Heisman Trophy, and McCaffrey came in second place to Henry out of Alabama. I'm not saying Henry did not deserve it. However, I will say this. If you look at Andrew Luck, he was also a runner-up in the Heisman Trophy out of Stanford University, just like McCaffrey was. And if you think about the times that Jim Plunkett, I believe, won the Heisman when he played at Stanford back in the day. But there's something about this David Shaw, the coach. He's only the 8th highest paid player in the Pac-12 of only 12 schools.
Highest paid coach.
He's the 8th highest paid coach, Big C.
We don't want to put him in the player category because he may rank a little lower than that.
Well, he might decide to play because I think the players get more money than the coaches out here sometimes when you look at Reggie Bush, Big C. But maybe that and that bias and that East Coast bias had something to do with it. I think ultimately when college football goes to maybe an 8-game playoff, you'll have more players winning the Heisman at the end of the season based on who performed well in the bowl games. Just my thought, Big C. But even down in the SEC, is there kind of a pushback from you guys in the SEC conference that you know you're going to get ranked in the top 10, at least 4 teams, it seems, almost every year, Big C? Is there a pushback from the SEC from expanding the conference to 8 games, Big C, instead of just these 4 that we have, Big C? Your thoughts on that?
Well, Charlton, is inevitable that it goes to 8 games. I think everybody across the nation, even the NCAA, understands that it's going to go to 8 games. Now, when you look at college football playoffs, how it originally started, I believe it started about 1978 with 1AA is where it started, Charlton. And it started with only 4 teams.
Yeah.
But 4 years later, Charlton, it had expanded to 8, eventually going to 16 teams. Because there's too many great teams around the country, too many great areas where you can play football games to hold people out and not give a fair opportunity.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, Charlton, and only 4 teams out of the top 10, out of the top 20 are allowed to play for this championship, and it's not a fair doling out, Charlton, because we've always talked about there will be at least 2 heritage schools make it into the playoffs. And also, they will not play each other in the first round because you want to guarantee that one of them have an opportunity to make it to the championship game.
And see, that's something the Big Ten used to complain about. When we only had the BCS, they were always picking like the top 2 teams. I remember Tennessee out of the SEC. They played Florida State in a game back in the day when Tennessee won that game. You also had Alabama. You had LSU, and as well as Florida, Alabama. You know, they played, even LSU and Alabama played for the national title game, teams from the same conference, Big C. You also had LSU that beat Ohio State, and Florida beat Ohio State. And Florida even beat Oklahoma the year that Mark Sanchez was quarterback at USC, beat Penn State in the Rose Bowl 38-14. I think Florida whooped Oklahoma. I think it was 24-14, and that's when Tim Tebow was quarterback. But there was talk that USC was the best team in the country at that time. But because of this politicking that you good old boys do down south, I know you guys know about politics and hanging chads and all that stuff that they do down for the presidential debates. But they didn't want USC to play against Florida because they thought it gave USC a better chance to knock off an SEC power, and they chose Oklahoma, which always chokes in the big games unless you had Barry Switzer, Big C. Do you recall Oklahoma winning any big games outside of when Stoops beat Nick Saban and Alabama just a few years ago, Big C?
Well, Charlton, every time you look around, Bob Stoops finds a way to blow a critical game during the season.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been consistent at that. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. Oklahoma has been ranked for the past decade in the top 10, Charlton.
Yeah.
But, even like last year when they lost to the University of Texas in the Red River Classic.
Yeah.
They went into this game,
Texas.
favored by 28 points, Charlton.
Yeah.
28 points. How are you favored as a nationally ranked team in the top 10 in the country?
That was a Las Vegas. That was a Las Vegas Longhorns for that game, Big C. That's what that was.
Well, it also saves Charlie Strong's job there at the University of Texas, Charlton.
Yeah.
But Bob Stoops every year finds a way. I mean, they're going to Houston.
Yeah.
Opening game of the season. I don't expect them to come out of there victorious.
No, they're going to lose that game.
Losing their opening game of the season because Houston is that good of a team.
Yeah.
They're not underrated, Charlton. They have some great talent that they've put together over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, their head coach was offensive coordinator at Ohio State when Urban Meyer first arrived.
Yeah.
And he's learned under Urban Meyer for years. So he runs that same type of offense with a great passing attack, and he's put together, when we talked about the great players in the state of Texas,
yeah,
he's brought a lot of them to the University of Houston. They've done a stadium expansion there at Charlton on campus where they've doubled the size of their stadium.
Yeah.
So they now get the quality athletes. They don't lose the quality athletes. They have a team that will remind you when they played at the Houston Astrodome.
Yeah.
And they had their Heisman Trophy winner, Andre Ware, quarterback, Charlton.
Yeah.
Those set NCAA records throwing the football. They have that type of offense once again at the University of Houston.
Well, speaking of setting records, tonight's segment is also sponsored by your California Lottery. What could a buck do for you, Big C? I'm saying right now, I keep telling you about that scratch and that itch thing, and I'm just going to claim I got the winning ticket. It's $127 million, Big C, won by Charlton and Big C Sports, and I hope they gave me the winning ticket this time because I even prayed on it, Big C. You know how prayer works, so I prayed on that ticket, Big C. For you good old boys down south, you understand prayer. But Big C, I also want to bring this up too before we get into a little bit of the NFL. I want to just ask you, college football, and I talk about this all the time when it comes to advertising, and we're on the iHeartRadio network platform of over 250 million people in their reach every week. That's 1 billion people every 30 days, Big C. And that's why supporting Charlton and Big C Sports makes a lot of sense. Just tweet out the Charlton and Big C Sports and follow us on Twitter or Facebook. And also, Big C, I just want to get this point in. If you look at what happened in the world of football and basketball and baseball, and even track and field, because that's very exciting. We know how the great Usain Bolt makes track and field exciting, a can't-miss sport. But I think about how the sports industry is a billion-dollar industry. And if you're a GM at any station, if you don't have a sports program, you're kind of turning your back on what half the population of the United States watches. And that's why the Super Bowl is king. It's become kind of a holiday. So if the Super Bowl is king, Big C, it's become a national holiday, why wouldn't every media outlet in the country have a sports program? If you don't, you're turning your back on something that's so blatant, and Roger Goodell understands it. That's why they make so much money in the NFL. But let me ask you about one more thing about the SEC conference. And I think you guys have done it first, and I know there's a lot of kind of hatred toward the SEC because they feel like this old school, this old power, this old money is where you guys are with the exploitation of young black athletes back there at Big C. When it comes to graduation rates, if you take Stanford versus Alabama, I think that's not really a measuring stick. Look at Notre Dame versus Texas. I think right now Texas has crossed the finish line first. So what is it about this push or lack of push to start compensating players? You're talking about 120,000 people for the Texas A&M and UCLA game, Big C, but any talk of money for athletes at all, Big C?
No, Charlton, and it's always been one of those things that have been pushed under the rug. Compensation for athletes, NCAA-wide, Nelson Brand, who had been the president of the NCAA forever,
Yeah.
Didn't ever want to talk about these things. But, Charlton, when we look at these coaches that can hold universities for ransom, get a raise.
Nick Saban.
Nick Saban did it, said, hey, I may go to Texas. Next thing you know, they bump him $2 more million, pay off his house, which had a $10 million mortgage on it, so he's debt-free.
Wow.
So, when you think about that, but then here's Nick Saban not wanting to let a defensive back go to another university within the conference, even though this kid had already graduated, Charlton.
Yeah, and he happened to be an African American kid, Big C. Just bring that up too, because oftentimes there's a bias in the way people are treated, but because no one talks about it, people think there's not. But I want to bring that up too, Big C. Go right ahead, sir.
Well, it's very true, Charlton, because we see white quarterbacks transferring all over the country, going to whatever university work when they beat out by an African-American quarterback. Well, I'm not going to sit behind this guy for the next couple of years because I know I'll never play.
Well, think back to the day, Big C, when Troy Aikman was recruited by Barry Switzer at Oklahoma. They played a game against Miami where he broke his leg. He called Terry Donahue, who was a head coach at UCLA, and said, I have a guy who can throw the football. Would you like to take him? And now there was no fight to keep Troy Aikman from transferring from the great Oklahoma out to UCLA, Big C, where he went on and led UCLA to a Rose Bowl. And, he's a draft pick by the Dallas Cowboys and won a couple of Super Bowls.
Three-time Super Bowl.
Three-time Super Bowl.
And the NFL Hall of Famer, Charlton.
Yeah.
But we've seen this throughout the history of sports, where white athletes have been able to transfer freely, whether it's in basketball, football, but the African-American athlete has been tied to the university.
Yeah.
That he's got chains and shackles on him saying that you can't leave until we're tired of you.
Yeah.
And so you've seen that throughout history. You think about many of the great athletes who never got a chance to play, but all of a sudden they got a chance to get into the NFL, and they were able to show their wares. Because they were backing up another great athlete because they could not go to a university. So to sit here and say that there's a fair playing field, it's not, because coaches, you think about the SEC in whole. How many coaches in the SEC came from other schools? And you can start at the top. Nick Saban came from elsewhere. Les Miles came from Oklahoma State. Kevin Sumlin came from Houston. We got Ron Franklin at Penn State came from Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
He left SEC. Who else was it in the conference, Charlton?
Well, you have even Urban Meyer, who was down there at the SEC as well. He went up to Ohio State. Urban Meyer, too. He transferred up.
New coach. Well, look at McElwain down at Florida.
Yeah.
Muschamp.
It's a whole slew of them. It's a whole slew of them that do that, Big C. And something else that we got to keep.
Muschamp went to South Carolina.
South Carolina, yeah.
You got another coach, and I'm trying to think of his name right off the back, Charlton. But as you get older and CTE starts kicking your butt on you'll run across this same thing that I do.
Well, what you call CTE, we call moonshine, Big C. Sometimes that's what's kicking in also, Big C, just tell the truth.
Well, hey, a little liquid libation in life goes a long way, Charlton.
Well,
you get this free movement of coaches, and every time these coaches move, Charlton, they're not moving for less money. They're moving for more money.
Yeah.
So they're paying these coaches this copious amount of money and saying, as an athlete, we won't even give you a Happy Meal from McDonald's. You gotta stay put.
That's definitely true. And I also told everybody that Reggie Bush at USC, he was dating, I believe, Kim Kardashian, and among a few other things that I hear about, Big C. And so sometimes when you have a good-looking, rich girlfriend, she gives you money, that's an NCAA violation, Big C. So it's not Reggie Bush's fault necessarily.
What, they have a good-looking girlfriend?
Yeah, Kim Kardashian, she's part of, I guess, the Hollywood clan, but I think she's married to Kanye West. He's a rapper, I believe. But yeah, Reggie Bush was there first and helped him launch his career. And obviously, he's still making waves in the NFL. But I just want to say, Big C, that this segment is sponsored by United Labor, guaranteed life insurance up to $100,000 with no medical questions. We're also endorsed by the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. And we are working with all of the unions under the AFL-CIO. And Charlton Big C Sports is just like LeBron James. We want to hire over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers to help spread final expense and also United Labor Insurance to the union members in the United States. So we're also looking to put people back to work. You can tweet out to Charlton and Big C Sports if you're looking for work. Now, Big C, one more thing I want to bring up in this final segment here. I know that you were talking about this social consciousness that we keep hearing more programs do, whether it's our brethren at the NFL Network, our brethren at ESPN. I think there's something happening on Thursday where they're talking about should athletes have a social consciousness, but for the most part, they're only talking about the African-American athletes. Big C, your thoughts on that?
Well, ESPN has been listening to the show in depth, Charlton. We've talked about that consistently. What we talk about finds its way on ESPN within 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah.
48 hours, 24 hours from now, ESPN will have a show on, hosted by Janelle Hill, an African-American reporter on the His and Hers programming. And she's a beautiful, wonderful, intelligent broadcaster.
Yeah.
I give her kudos on that. But, they've taken what we've talked about, and I'm glad they have in a way. But they're showcasing black athletes having a social conscience. But only the black athletes, Charlton. You'll have a Carmelo Anthony on there. You'll have Rajon Rondo. You'll have Mike Wilborn doing his cameo, as well as other black broadcasters, Charlton. But where are the white broadcasters, Charlton? You're going to tell me with all these blonde-haired, blue-eyed anchors that ESPN has, neither one of these were qualified to host a show on social consciousness and awareness?
Well,
how many white athletes, Charlton, will be within the programming? How many of them will they call on to say, hey, you have to make a difference in society, Charlton?
Yeah, and what's right and wrong? And right and wrong is not about black and white. If Dr. King was afraid to talk about what's right and for all people, then we would still be dealing with some of the Jim Crow garbage that you guys deal with down south, Big C. And when I look at some of my media brethren, I remember being in the press box with Tom Hammond, who just did the Olympics, well, even Rod Gilmore, who when he was at Stanford, Steve Physiak, Bill McDonald, Bob Fitzgerald, who does for the Golden State Warriors, does their game, Greg Papa, who is the Oakland Raiders play-by-play radio announcer. Of course, John Madden started back with his crew, with the great Pat Summerall. And being a part of that, I was oftentimes the only African-American, whether it was Fox or CBS Sports. There was Dick Enberg, worked with their crew at NBC Sports when they went down and did the Super Bowl. But I remember I worked in production for a lot of those guys before I got onto the radio, and I was oftentimes the only African-American. And I say that because if we don't open doors for our own people, for our own kids, or people of all color, then nobody will. When black men are the ones who work the hardest, been denied the most to open opportunities, ironically, those sales jobs are not necessarily sales jobs, but on-air jobs went to Caucasian women. I'm not saying that's good or bad things, but we all understand that the civil rights movement opened doors for equality on paper, but a lot of Caucasian women were promoted to management, and black men were still marginalized. I even saw that in media, where working in the Bay Area, and it's so prevalent, because if we don't talk about it, it's just a silent thing where people tacitly consent. I remember this lady from Chicago when I worked in the Bay Area in San Francisco. I was in sales and doing commercials and advertising. John Vella for the Oakland Raiders did a commercial for him. But I remember this lady, her name was Marilyn, and her statement was, do you think Charlton can sell in a white environment over in Walnut Creek? Now, one of my white counterparts stood up for me, and she said, of course he can. He's well-spoken, he's sharp, he's polished. But here's a woman who was given a managerial position because of civil rights movements, and when she got into that same position, like a lot of people do today, she became as discriminatory as the white males were. But it takes all people to point out people who are doing wrong, whether it's Black Lives Matter or anything. Our brethren in media, if we are too afraid to speak up about injustices, then we're just the next sycophants and you deserve to be discriminated against. So I'm not afraid to stand up for the next person, Big C. And I think this thing with ESPN, even though they're following our lead, Big C, I think it's going to be better if they have a diverse cast. Black men, white men, women, etc., of all different groups, because they represent the United States, supposedly, Big C. So why are they only putting the onus on black athletes and black broadcasters, Big C? Your thoughts on that?
Well, the reason why, Charlton, they make it a minority show is the public will portray it as an angry show.
Yeah.
That these persons don't have an agenda. They just mad and angry and out there blasting.
Like the black Donald Trump in a sense. Like the black Donald Trump.
They will sound like a black Donald Trump without a platform. There's been a couple isolated events, and that's going to be America's perspective.
Yeah.
It's not going to be America that, has to live through this every day, that grows up in South Central L.A., South Chicago, in the Bronx, these type of places where your life is at risk every day just walking on the street.
Yeah.
Philadelphia. So when we think about these things and you don't put in white suburban America, say, hey, we're not concerned about that because this doesn't come to our neighborhood. We're in these gated communities and we have security guards at the gate to let you in and out. Also,
yeah, that's true.
Drive around in the neighborhood. So
yep.
we don't worry about the kind of things that inner city and that most African Americans and Latinos have to be worried about.
Well, see,
so they're alienated from that part of the world, Charlton, so they don't want to put them on and ask them that tough question, and they say, I don't know, because I've never had to deal with that.
Well, see, and that's crazy because it was a white guy that opened the door for me back in 1996, Tom Kelly, a play-by-play broadcaster for USC. And he was just about fairness. He said, hey, you do a good job. What do you want to do? And I told him, and I got a call from Mike Royd, who worked with John Madden just about 2 days, maybe 3 days later, Big C. So to him, it wasn't about color. And I asked all of us in media, don't be afraid. Don't be a sycophant. Just say what's right and wrong. Because most people, if they have a leader like what we do, Big C, they'll follow you. But if you're a quiet sycophant person, then nothing really changes. And I want to say this last segment is sponsored by One Life America Life Insurance. We are the leaders in the United States when it comes to offering final expense to help protect American families. And I'm looking to hire over 1,000 licensed insurance brokers to help educate families and also protect families with life insurance. We'll also pay your E&O insurance up to $1 million per agent. Contact Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. And also this segment is sponsored by BeneathHisWingsFoundation.org and Cynthia Evans of CYNN Entertainment, and also Becca the Business Cupid. So Big C, the last thing I want to ask you about, when it comes to this world of college football, and I still want to get a grasp on this because not too many talk about it, but I congratulate LeBron James for having his investment program on MSNBC, not being a sycophant, very proud of that. Look at how many people will benefit from having investors in the city of Cleveland go out to explore young talent of all colors. It's not just for black kids. Imagine if we had the heart to do that in all of our cities where we have sports, Big C. How many more people can we make? The next media people, the next entrepreneurs, the next salesperson. And I think that's so important, Big C. One more thought about LeBron James and how he's stepping out into the forefront the way Michael Jordan never had, Big C. Your thoughts on that?
Well, when you look at opportunity, that's what this presents. People who would have never had a chance. And you don't have to have a multi-million-dollar idea.
Yeah.
You can just have a couple $1,000 idea. You set your table where you want to be. The opportunity is being presented to you to present this in front of a panel to get your program financed, Charlton.
Yeah.
And it comes down to having opportunity. Not so many people in America get that, Charlton. It's, you get turned down before you can walk through the door.
Oh, yeah.
As we talked about, the SBA loans are not there anymore like they once were. When you go in as a small business entrepreneur or a hopeful one and get a loan to start up a business, that's hard to get in America these days. But with LeBron James opening this program, Charlton, in the city of Cleveland, to the local people who have supported him and his family for decades, Charlton, who have been fans of his, he's giving back and hope, dreams and aspirations to be met by these people. It's like going into a bank trying to get a home loan, Charlton.
Yeah.
And you walk in there and they say, well, you don't have your paperwork filled out, or you can't afford in this neighborhood. Have you thought about a lesser home?
Yeah.
African Americans have heard that forever.
Oh, yeah. We know that redlining exists.
Yeah, have you thought about a lesser home? Well, I can afford this one, and I want to live in this neighborhood. Why not? Well, you may not be comfortable there. If they don't straight up tell you, blacks will sell and finance in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
But this is an opportunity, and when you look at LeBron, this is not a racial show.
No.
It does not matter of your ethnicity.
Right.
All that matters is your ingenuity, your business savvy, and what you want to pursue that can allow you to be successful in Cleveland society, Coach.
Well, Big C, I agree with that very much, and I'm so definitely not a sycophant. I believe that there have been people who opened doors for me when I was a little boy, black and white. I refuse not to do the same thing. So I want to thank everyone who's ever helped me, even from punt, pass, and kick when I was 8 years old, that kept saying, you can do it, I'm proud of you, I love your voice, I love the way you conduct yourself. I want to do that for the next young kid that's out there thinking about how to do something. If you want to start a radio show, we work with a lot of people in media from ABC and Fox and CBS and NBC Sports, Big C. I'm impressed by people who do a good job. There's also David Gibbons at iHeartRadio. I appreciate him and reaching out to me and having some ideas that we can use to grow the show bigger. And Tamika Dawsa an attorney that I'm working with, an NFL association, alumni association. But Big C, I just want to leave this point, and I'll let you close out. If you want to do something, no matter what color you are, it's always going to have some resistance. But you got to follow people who have what you want. Don't listen to people who don't have what you want. Whenever you want to do something, everybody has an opinion. But just ask them, show me your show. If they have an opinion, have them show you their show. Not tell you what you should do for your program. Because with the Charlton Big C Sports, we're bold enough to go forward. We're not waiting for someone to give us permission. And if you have that mentality, you're going to make it. It doesn't matter what color you are. If you have the belief in yourself and you just do it and work in your craft, you'll make it, Big C. I'll let you close it out.
We're talking when we think about the world of sports and how the tentacles of the world of sport reaches out in American society, whether it's the fan base, Charlton, whether it's the business-based involvement, whether it's just the athletic involvement, Charlton. The world of sports is the common denominator in American society. People think that it's politics. No, it's the world of sports. The world of sports can ease a lot of tension. Because you don't see ESPN bringing corporate America on there on a round table. Yeah. They're going to search out the leadership of athletes, hoping that these guys and ladies can say the right thing that will calm some of American society. But athletes have a great power and an obligation to society. They have an obligation to perform, give their best for the amount of money they're making, but they also have an obligation, Charlton, to go back and speak with kindness and leadership to their communities.
Well, Big C, I agree with that very much. And for all of you out there who want to be something, just like we're asking Phil Knight for $1 million, and he's going to give it because he understands talent when he sees it. But if he doesn't do it, somebody else will. So be bold when you go out there in life. And if you're not bold, just listen to Charlton and Big C Sports enough, and you'll learn how to be bold. The world will bend to you when you're persistent. Persistence will get everything, no matter who you are. Always believe in yourself and keep trying. And every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, worldwide, you can follow Charlton and Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network. And we want to tell you that we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.